Hello everyone. Welcome to our another Tech Talk session. I'm your host from Tech Jobs Fair, and in today's session, I'm here with our special guest, Mr. Julian from Deloitte. Julian is the manager in the business insight team of Deloitte's M&A transaction services practice. He has been involved in several M&A projects, especially in the context of carve-outs as well as due diligence activities. He also worked in multiple internal development projects aimed at digitalizing the financial advisory practices of Deloitte Germany. And in this session, we will learn more about data analytics in M&A transactions at Deloitte. So let's welcome Julian. Hi, Julian. How are you doing?
Hi, Zayam. I'm good. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much for joining. And I'm excited to welcome you all here, our viewers. So, Julian, before moving forward to your our main topic, would you like to add about you a bit more about you and what you do at Deloitte?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you kind of already introduced me a little bit. So I kind of have an economics background. I'm located here at Deloitte at the Frankfurt office. Have been with Deloitte for a little bit more than 5 years now. And before I joined Deloitte, I kind of made a PhD here in economics at the Goethe University in Frankfurt. And this was a very quantitative economics program. So you had to work with a lot of data, a lot of statistical analysis, doing a lot of coding and so on. And after finishing my PhD, I kind of decided I don't want to stay in academia, but kind of go into the private industry. And then I kind of skimmed through job offerings, saw a job offering by Deloitte, went through the hiring process, and then, yeah, September 2018, I kind of joined Deloitte in a somewhat different team as we have it today, and have been there ever since. And yeah, right now I'm kind of here in the M&A transaction services team and the business insight sub team, which is just our analytics team basically in M&A transaction services, in a role as a manager. And yeah, as you already said, have been involved in numerous M&A projects since my time when I joined.
Okay, very, very great experience. Before moving forward to our topic, I would like to add here that Deloitte is joining us in our upcoming event in Berlin. So that would be in 31st edition of TechJobs Fair. So if you guys are from Germany or in any other location, so definitely you can join our event and you can meet the recruiting team of Deloitte at the booth. And yeah. So also like if you anyone have any question that you can also drop here in the comments and we will also cover after our session, right? So if anyone have any questions, feel free to add your comments. So Julian, before if I talk about M&A transactions, so what is today's role of analytics, especially in M&A transactions?
Yeah, sure. Um, Maybe we should unpack this a little bit. So first of all, I mean, what is an M&A transaction? M&A transaction just means one company wants to buy another company, or a financial investor wants to buy another company, or maybe a large corporation wants to sell part of its business, right? I mean, that's kind of what we mean by M&A transaction. And maybe to give a little insight of what exactly we are doing in M&A transaction services, there I would say kind of two main lines of work which we are providing, or main lines of services. The first line of services is we kind of create the financials of the M&A target which is supposed to be sold. So if you, for example, imagine like a large corporation which wants to sell part of its business, which is not bundled in a single subsidiary, but maybe distributed across different subsidiaries, there are no readily available financials available for this M&A target. You kind of have to kind of create them from nothing, because if you don't have the financials, you have nothing to show for a potential investor. They don't know what will be the sales this new target which would make if they acquire it. They don't know about the cost base. They don't know about the profit this target would create. And that's, of course, very, very valuable or important for them that they have this information. So that's kind of where we come in as the first line of service we provide. We kind of create these financials. Second line of work is, I guess, is kind of analyzing the financials and potentially on a very fine-grained and detailed matter level of detail. So, for example, if you look at revenue growth, for example, you see that revenue grew from one year to another by 10%. Usually, what a potential investor is kind of interested in is where did this growth come from? I mean, was it located or was it focused on specific countries, specific regions? Was it specific distribution channels and so on? So I have a lot of questions which you kind of want to answer with your analysis. And that's kind of the services we offer, and then an M&A transaction services. And now to basically come back to your initial question, the best way to answer is maybe to contrast how these two services, which I just outlined, have been provided maybe 10, 15 years ago. So 10, 15 years ago, they were not very much kind of a data-driven exercise. They were pretty much, I would say, kind of top-down thing where you kind of met with managers, maybe accountants from the target or from the M&A entity you want to sell, and then you talk to them and ask them, okay, what do you think will be kind of the sales and the cost base of the entity you want to sell, right? So it's just very qualitative, very top down. You talk to a lot of to a few people, and then you kind of based on some assumptions and estimations, you derive some kind of financials and do your analysis based on those financials you estimate, and that's kind of what you show potential investors. This was kind of the past, and I mean that's just basically to be fair how I imagine how it was, because I never took part in this kind of old process. I'm only in the new process, and the new process today is kind of a very bottom-up data-driven approach. So what you usually do is you kind of you have your M&A entity there, which you kind of want to sell, and you go into their ERP system. So they have their system there, and they have an accounting system there, they have sales system and whatever, and you pull possibly very granular and very quite a lot of data out of the system, and then you use the data you extracted from the target in order to kind of do the things which I told you about. So on the first hand, creating those financials if required, or doing a deep dive into financials in order to do a very granular analysis of the numbers, and therefore provide way more information and way more kind of reliable information to potential investors. And that's, well, how it's done today compared to how it was in the past. And that's the role mainly, I would say, of data analytics in M&A transactions.
No, very well. And if I go deep in this data-driven approach, like what definitely analytics have changed. If you talk about data, then definitely there is analytics, right? So, how this analytics gain relevance, especially in this M&A transaction in recent years?
Yeah, it has grown a lot. I mean, mainly because ERP systems, they get better in terms of collecting data and also in terms of allowing to export the data out of the system so that you can do something with it, right? I mean, I don't know, 10 years ago or 10, 15 years ago, when the first accounting systems were kind of introduced, they were very rudimentary, so not very sophisticated, maybe didn't have a lot of data points in them, maybe didn't even
Hmm.
allow to get the data points out of the system. So there wasn't really much you could do with your accounting system back then. Just doing what it kind of was supposed to do. Maybe do the accounting in your company. But nowadays we have way more information you can get out of the system, and that's kind of the foundation or the foundation of our business model, in a sense that we kind of get the data out of the systems. They have been grown, and the data availability has been grown in the last 10 years very much, and is will probably further grow in the future. And that's how we kind of come into play, the data analytics guys.
Okay, very well. And if I talk about Deloitte here, so what is your company's approach to use analytics in this M&A transactions?
Yeah, it kind of depends from project to project, but especially in large projects. So for large corporate clients, for example, what you usually have is a setting where the data you need in order to kind of provide the analysis you're supposed to do, or to create the financials you're supposed to create. The data usually do not come out from one system in the ERP landscape of the client or of the target entity. You usually have to talk to different people who know about different systems, and then you kind of have to get those people to kind of extract the appropriate data from those systems. And then in the end, what you kind of have multiple data, potentially very much data. I mean, potentially multiple millions of rows of data points you kind of need to handle with, which came from different systems. And the approach we use here at Deloitte M&A Transaction Services in Germany is kind of we take all those data from the target and essentially put them into one database, which we work with, which is kind of our technical solution, which will then serve as a single source of truth for everything we will do from that point onwards with the data, whether we will transform it, whether we create some visualizations from the data, whether we analyze them or whatever. The single
Mm-hmm.
source of truth database, which we create from the original data which we received by the target, is kind of the anchor point which we use to do everything afterwards. And that's, I would say, kind of the general technical setup we use here in our team.
Okay, okay. Maybe I missed something about any tool you mentioned, or
Mhm.
maybe I'm curious about which tool you guys are using and technologies you guys are using in this M&A transactions.
I mean, there is not necessarily one specific tool we only use. In general, we are kind of very open to all kinds of tools which we can use to get the job done. Kind of
Mm-hmm.
a tool which we regularly use is a business intelligence tool named ClickSense, which, if you kind of look a little closer into it, is basically very similar to, like I said, just a database with the visualization component kind of put top on it, which you can use to do your analysis. And where even if you look into it, the syntax you
Mm-hmm.
use in order to do the data transformations of the data you get into this tool is very similar to SQL. So basically the standard query language you use in relational databases. So that's kind of, I would say, the main tool we use. What we also have at Deloitte, we kind of have proprietary own developed kind of extensions to this tool. So that's nothing you find anywhere else. It's really just something you find in our team, basically, which we regularly use in those M&A projects which we work upon with this tool. But like I said, it's kind of standard tool we use, but there are also others. So yeah, in general, working with business intelligence tools, I think is kind of a regular thing we do in M&A transactions. So besides ClickSense, also one tool we every now and then use, I would say, is Tableau, another big player in the business intelligence tools market, I would say. And even sometimes we kind of use high-level program languages like Python if we have some special requirements from the client which cannot be done in the business intelligence tools we usually work with. That's, I would say, kind of our approach.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And now, if I talk about challenges, maybe you are facing, your team is facing. So, what are the common challenges for analytics in this M&A transactions?
Yeah, I mean, challenges kind of come in multiple steps of the process where we are involved in. So I think I told you that in order to do our work, what we usually do is we kind of extract data from multiple systems, right? In order
Mm-hmm.
to and put them in one database, and then we do our thing, kind of. And very often, what you have is if you get data, or actually not very often, basically I would say always, what you have is if you get data from different systems which are supposed to show the same thing, like for example the sales, maybe broken out by different details from one system to the other. But if you kind of
Mm-hmm.
compare them, usually you have some kind of reconciling differences across the different systems. So one system maybe says revenue in 2020 was, I don't know, 100 million, and the other system says it's 110 million. And then you kind of have a 10 million difference between those two systems. And
Mm-hmm.
you kind of have to find out what's the reason for this. And there are multiple reasons why these differences can occur. Maybe something is missing in the one system, and if you ask some people in your M&A entity target about this, they can immediately explain it to you. Maybe it's kind of an error in exporting or extracting the data from the one system because this is a very error-prone activity, actually. I mean, if you talk to the ERP guys at your target, they just have to set one filter in a wrong matter or wrong way or whatever, and then you kind of get the wrong set of numbers out of it. That's another source or explanation why you kind of have these reconciling differences. And sometimes, even though I guess that's more rare case, is you sometimes just have errors in the system itself. Because I mean, this is a very fine-grained and detailed work which we're doing there, and usually we're kind of the first guys who really look that closely into the data of the entity target, and kind of we're the first to detect that there have been some errors in feeding in the data into your system in the first place. So that's kind of one complication, I would say. You have those reconciling differences from the numbers you get from different systems. And in
Mm-hmm.
general, a common general challenge in our line of work is we have to be very precise because in the end, what we fabricate, so we data analytics guys or business insights guys fabricate, is kind of the foundation which is used by usually a lot of other teams from Deloitte, which are not that technical, in order to do their work and in order to do their analysis to fabricate their output basically. And if we kind of mess things up, this can have grave effects on the work that our colleagues are doing, and then it can have grave effects on the price negotiations in the end. Because I mean, we're talking here maybe about or potentially about a possible transaction which goes into the billions, and if you kind of are off in the number we fabricate by maybe 1 million, this can have an effect in the tens of millions in the price negotiations in the end, and then the price which is sold, which is paid by the buyer in the end. So that's I think being precise and consistent in the work you do is very, very important in what we are doing.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much for sharing this. And definitely, Julian, here some of our viewers are from different background as well, and especially many of them are job seekers, and or maybe a few of them who want to build their career in this role. So, as an analytics specialist, you can say. So, as a job seeker, which skill set is required to work as a analytics specialist in M&A?
I mean, different characteristics or different things you kind of need to bring with you if you want to join us. Basically, first thing, obviously, you kind of have to be a precise nature, because, like I just said, being precise and providing a consistent set of numbers is kind of crucial in what we're doing. Also, I think I touched upon this. I mean, if you think about kind of a standard project, what kind of people from our side, from Deloitte sides, are involved in this? Usually, you kind of have a
Mhm,
cross-functional setup. So there's maybe a few guys from the analytics team, so me and maybe one or two colleagues from my business insights team, who are kind of the analytics specialists. But then you usually have a whole bunch of other guys and way more guys who are not that technical, who are just, I would say, kind of purely transaction services guys, who are more into accounting, more into finance, and so on. And they don't have a sophisticated understanding of technology. They are kind of think in terms of financial terminology. They think in terms of accounting, and at least to a certain degree, you kind of need to understand what they are doing. So you need to have this kind of basic grasp of how accounting works, how finance works, that you can talk to them, that they kind of can tell you what is the requirement they need you to do, that you understand what they want you to do, and that you kind of are able then, after understanding what they want you to do, kind of to implement it in a technical way, basically. So you kind of need to be not only good in on the technical side of things, that's obviously important, but also you need to have some knowledge on the business side of things, how I like to call it. So having an understanding of accounting and finance and so on. That's I think that's very important. And then on the technical side, I mean, I don't think there's kind of a standard pattern you need to bring along in order to start with us. I guess if I look into my team, each one has his own strength in terms of which technology are they good with, which kind of technical aspects are they good with or not. In general, I would say you should be able to kind of work with data in some way, and possibly also or preferentially have some experience in working with data. Doesn't need to be kind of financial data necessarily. Like the data we work with can also any form of data which I've worked with in the past. I think is helpful here. Need to have
mhm.
some skill in coding, because that's usually what we do a lot of our time. We
Yeah.
kind of have to set up the code in order to create these ETL routines to do the data transformations and so on. And also, I would say kind of a certain willingness to kind of work into new topics, because I mean, we're kind of working on projects here, and projects, I mean, they can range from a few days to a few months, basically. And every time you kind of start a new project, you have to get into a new topic. Basically, it's a new M&A transaction. You have to get to know the entity which is supposed to be sold. Maybe in some projects, it's even required that you kind of have to get into a new technology. I mean, the technologies we work with here, I kind of didn't know them before I joined Deloitte. I worked pretty much everything here on the job. And of course, you need
Mhm.
to have a certain, need to be ready and willing to put in the effort to learn these tools. And I guess that's
Okay.
very important for what we're doing.
And any must-have programming language? Obviously, you have mentioned like it's also like required, but any must-have programming language you like to add here?
Mm, I'm not even sure we have a must-have. I think it's helpful if you have SQL exposure before, because this main tool we're working with is, like I said, very similar to SQL.
Mhm.
I can actually also tell you what was the exposure I had before I joined Deloitte. The main exposure there I have was in R, basically doing statistical analysis on that, and also in Stata, which is kind of also a statistical software. These were kind of the two main tools I knew about. A certain amount of knowledge about Excel, because that's something you kind of need to know about, at least on a fundamental level, is also helpful. But otherwise, I think if required, we would kind of teach you everything here on the job, because we also have internal training programs in our team, how to work with our tools. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Great, great. Well, thank you so much for sharing this. I hope this information will help many of our viewers who want to build their career in analytics field. So, moving forward, Julian, if I want to know more about this, like M&A transactions, how for the future, right? So, what are the expectations do you have with regard to analytics in M&A for the future?
Um, Overall, good expectations, I would say. Because I mean, the point I made right at the beginning that we kind of have these ERP systems and they kind of get better and better in collecting data. I mean, this still holds true for the future, right? I mean, it's if you think about things like Internet of Things and also the general topic that kind of data generation kind of increases from year to year. It also holds true for the ERP systems, which you see in the companies which are kind of the targets of our transactions. So the kind of the future there, or kind of what you see there, is kind of I think pretty good for people like us who work with the data, because we kind of get ever more data there in the companies and in the target companies in the transactions, and I think that's a pretty good foundation for the future for us. Second of all, besides getting more and more data in a potential M&A transaction, I think also kind of the common things you hear also in the media, like artificial intelligence and so on, they also bode very well for what we're doing, because I mean, it's not entirely clear right now what role artificial intelligence, for example, will play, but I'm very sure it will play a role, and you will have something to do in if you kind of work in our line, that you will have some exposure to working with AI tools, which are maybe specifically tailored to what we're doing, maybe even internally developed. I'm pretty sure that's something which will come into play, and also is kind of a good sign, because it's kind of opening new possibilities for us how we do our work in the future in employing these new technologies. So overall, I would say future outlook is pretty bright for what we're doing, and I would rather expect to do more work than less work. If I look into the past 5 years I've been here with Deloitte.
No, great. Thank you so much. So Julian, like as we are running out of time here, and so we'll have to end this session here.
Mhm.
But thank you so much for joining this session and sharing about this topic, especially like it's a very unique topic what we have covered so far about this data analytics and M&A transactions. So yeah, that's all for today. But if you would like to add anything from your side, please.
Nothing specific. Also, just many thanks for having me here, Sagam, and in general to the listeners. Whenever you're kind of interested in what we're doing, feel free to reach out to me or to Deloitte. I'm happy to give you further answers if you have questions.
No, thank you so much. Yeah, people, our viewers can also reach out to Julian, your LinkedIn profile, and you can, if you have any questions related to M&A transactions or something, so yeah, feel free to reach out to Julian. And well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. So that is the end of this session here. See you all in our next session. Till then, be happy and keep smiling. Thank you so much.
Thank you.